Hello, and welcome for the last time to Neurologic. After 5 years of production, I, Leo Jones, will be shutting down this podcast. I have no regrets. It's been a journey of creativity, advocacy, and discovery, exploring various topics and individuals all along the way. I kept my word that the content would be freely available and tried to ensure that it was accessible within my limited means. Most importantly, I answered and realized my utmost question. Is this for me even possible? And for 5 years, it was. However, all things must come to an end. Everything, eventually, must cease. Neurologic is no exception. While I am contemplating and considering future prospects for audiovisual advocacy, at this moment I am taking a sabbatical of indeterminate time. Hopefully I can start something new, and with some luck and perseverance, invite other autistics and or neurodivergent folks to join me. As the profound baseball player Yogi Berra once said, "It ain't over till it's over." I also want to thank you for listening. Words simply cannot convey how important, how crucial it is to know that someone, somewhere is listening. It expresses value and importance, that you're not just shouting into the void, that someone does understand, or at the very least wants to understand. I'm glad you've been here, and I hope I was able to articulate our struggles, not with being autistic per se, but with the systems and societies that we are required to navigate, challenging obstacles that rarely come without any kind of guidance or instruction. I hope the insight I provided was useful, boosted your confidence and resolve, and perhaps was also amusing and fun at certain moments. I hope that all of your dreams are beautiful, and that you find your neurotribe, no matter who you are or where you are, and that you are able to trust in those around you to genuinely and authentically accept, include, and welcome you, not in spite of being neurodivergent, but as a unique and joyful part of your whole identity. But before I finish packing up this podcast, I wanted to discuss trust. From Merriam-Webster's dictionary: to believe that someone is good and honest and will not harm you, or that something is safe and reliable. To have confidence in something or to believe in someone. An assured reliance on the character, ability, strength, or truth of someone or something. To place confidence in, rely upon. To hope and expect that something is true. End quote. Can you really trust a smile, a positive, placating message, claims of inclusion? Since 2018, I've been dancing around the issue of trust in one way or another. When you truly think about it, a majority of our problems seem to branch off from trust, or more accurately, a lack thereof. We're unable to trust healthcare professionals to engage in quality care with up-to-date information about us, and without embracing stereotypes or bigotry. We are unable to trust schools to deliver a quality education, instead being subjected to myths and archaic, brutal techniques that should have been outlawed decades ago, not to mention disregard of IEPs, federally recognized accommodations, and accessibility. We're unable to trust law enforcement to not kill us or violently arrest us due to their erroneous association of stimming with drug use, among other assumptions. We're unable to trust charity groups that claim to work on our behalf, only to find that they have their own priorities, which seldom match ours. We're unable to trust celebrities that claim that they want to help us, but frequently decide, from their own limited knowledge and understanding, what help we should receive, what form it should take, and become alarmingly adversarial when we criticize their well-intentioned but harmful actions. We are unable to trust parents, at times even our own, due to a consistent theme of judgment, anger, and resentfulness aimed at how our existence has allegedly destroyed their perfect lives. We are unable to trust society to not infantilize us, to correctly perceive us as adults. After all, it's easier to control children. They often don't have the same rights as adults and are still learning the unwritten and obfuscated rules inherent to the cultures in which we live. With such a profound history of saying one thing, doing another, and then blaming us for voicing our displeasure, can you trust neurotypicals? The answer is not a monolith, not 100% in either direction, of course. Trust is a gradient. Some people you trust more than others, some organizations more than others. Too much or too little trust can be problematic, and it may take years to dial the proper amount of trust in, depending on each unique situation or relationship. In the spirit of trust, I am joined by one of my closest friends who is also autistic to converse about trust and how themes of trust affect the autism and autistic communities. There's much to discuss, and we won't have easy answers or really any answers for the most part, but it will be engaging, amusing, and hopefully will encourage such discussions in the future. So let's delay no longer and get started. All right, so after that intro, dealing with this being the last episode, as indicated, I've invited a friend and colleague of mine that is working in an artistry program for disabled individuals. Bree, do you want to say more about yourself?
Hi, I guess I am an autistic person, 35. Been working at an IDD day program, that's Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities day program, for about a little over 5 years now. Our clientele are all adults at varying degrees of support needs. It's been eye-opening, especially as an autistic individual myself, for sure.
Excellent. So with this last episode, one of the things, and I go over this in the intro, but I think that a central issue above all is really trust when it comes to autistics and neurotypicals.
With all things, really, but yeah.
I mean, true,
like many things, it's weirdly the same for neurotypicals and for neurodivergents, that, hey, we're still people and we still need the same thing, and trust is a big one.
Yeah, I think
definitely looks different.
True. Well, I think also there is not an understanding of that to a certain extent when it comes to various autism organizations.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, and autism parents and others. Basically, I don't think neurotypicals really have a lot of trust, and we don't have trust for neurotypicals. Mm-hmm. And there are certain inherent characteristics with this, and when it comes to autistic traits, things like directness, honesty, clarity, these are things that are talked about a lot, mm-hmm. but are often disparaged. It's, this person's extremely direct, very honest, even
well, and it's always looked at as a bad thing too. For some reason, even our most noble qualities are, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, why would you say this thing? Why would you be so honest?
You have a strong sense of justice. You're too inflexible there.
Yeah. It's also the other direction, especially when it comes to clarity, that there is a literalness that is kind of inherent, but it's for clarity. And if mm-hmm. there's not clarity, there can't be really trust there. I think that's a major problem, because we want you to be direct. We want you to be honest. Well, not like that. Well, okay, but then who really has the issue here? Is it autistics who will be direct, who will apply that all the way around? Mm-hmm. Or is it the neurotypicals, such as their parents or family or professionals in their lives, that are kind of pushing back against that.
Well, there's a couple things there, right? Like, the first thing is, like, as it always does, it comes down to marketability, right? How much of a use are you to the corporate machine? Like, you see a lot of the time, it's like, oh, well, if you're too direct, you're not selling yourself well. Like, that's the vibe, right? Like, oh, it's gonna make you useless as a worker if you're too... Which is so funny because, I feel like every company, hot take, but I feel like every company would actually benefit from having very, like, cleverly placed neurodivergence in different, in different fields and positions where you need efficiency to happen without a lot of BS, like...
Or even just,
clearly.
Or even just, like, auditing. Could you imagine how much fraud would not take place because people would be too...
Fill your IT department with neurodivergence and don't expect them to be nice to people who are stupid, and you're going to have a much smoother time of it.
Yeah.
But joking aside, like, that's a genuine issue, right? Like, it's all about the marketability, how useful you are. But also, so, again, I work at a place where I am assisting other disabled folks like myself to reach... I mean, I'm the ideal, right? Like, I'm what is considered to be the ideal by...
You're successful and independent and autonomous.
I work on my own. I handle my own money. I don't need a lot of support. I have a job. That's what they say they want, right? And I am assisting other people to reach that stage if that is what they want to, but that's not the point of what we're getting at.
Right.
But, like, I feel like the tact that is taken to teach tact is so weird. Like, it's such a problem to see, well, you can't be direct in that way. Well, why not? Well, because you just can't. It's not what's done. That's not how you teach that, man. Like, you know what works is saying, hey, you can't talk about this topic in this environment because if you'll look around, you'll see that your peers are uncomfortable. You don't want to make people uncomfortable, right? No, that's not my goal. I don't want to upset them. Great. That's why you don't do that here. These are the people you can talk about those things with and the circumstances in which you can talk about those things. You just have to be direct and clear and concise.
Well, in a lot of the tact, the issue is discernment, is discretion. And we don't teach that because the problem is discretion does not have a clear linear boundary. It changes depending on the circumstances you're in.
It does.
Yeah. And
so you have to be willing to actually think about and examine why you do the things that you do. And a lot of neurotypicals, in my experience, are wholly unwilling to examine the why of what they do.
Yeah.
Well, you do it because you do it. Okay, but why? Because if you understand why, then it's much easier to look at a nuanced situation and make a judgment call. You actually need that information.
Yeah. Well, not to mention that once you start to analyze that, there are times when it's, oh, wait, we shouldn't be doing this.
Exactly. And nobody wants to admit
some of this shit we do is just absolutely wrong.
Yeah. Or pointless.
Yeah.
Or harmless, even.
Yeah.
Like, well, don't do that. You shouldn't do that. Why not? Well, there isn't really a reason, but you shouldn't.
But it makes me feel bad. And I have to be honest and say, I don't know to an autistic person, or I didn't do this. And, I'm not the disabled one, is what usually you get sometimes. Not that direct, but close to it. But I think this also factors into certain pathologization of autistic folks, and the fact of how, especially here in the West, that neurotypical society operates. Because it's we've decided you don't understand this, and then when you do, it's either you've succeeded, or they don't know what to do, or they decide that you're not really that autistic.
People are not prepared for the conversation that comes from, oh no, I did understand it. It's not that I don't understand it. It's just stupid.
Yeah, they don't enjoy that. They don't. I mean, and the thing is, when it comes to things like humor, sarcasm, satire, the stereotype that we don't understand humor is absolutely incorrect. But that I see that stemming from trust of neurotypicals don't think that they can trust autistics to get the joke, or they believe that autistics are going to just sink the joke. You know, like you just said. Oh, I get it, but it's just not funny.
Right.
Yeah, like certain bigoted jokes you get that
Right.
are, or just stereotypical ones.
Which, I mean, that is hilariously, that is the exact perfect way to ruin a racist's racist joke.
Oh,
is
yeah.
to just be like, no, I didn't get it. Explain it to me.
Yeah, in fine detail. Please tell me
No,
exactly how this
explain
works.
why that's funny.
Yeah.
No, I got you were calling on this old stereotype. Explain why that's funny.
Yeah. And it's like, no, you don't understand. It's a Polish joke because Polish people are this way. And you're like, but that's not the case. Why is this a thing? And then it's like, well, you just don't get it. And then that factors into that pathologization. It factors into that stereotype of, oh, well, autistics just don't get humor. Well, maybe your jokes suck.
Just aren't that funny.
No, maybe they're really terrible. Maybe you need to work on upping your joke game a little bit.
Also, like the number of times I laugh in a day at my job, countless times. Like, sorry, but disabled people are funny as hell.
And how many times do you laugh at your standard neurotypical job that you used to have?
Well, I laughed a lot, but it was always a pity laugh to get tips.
That's not real laugh.
No,
Like
I maybe real laughed like once a year at my old job.
That just...
Of course, my old job was soul crushing.
That's fair. But I think also a lot of this stems from the fact that our society does not operate really on trust.
No.
I mean, and that's where you have, and I will say this because this is something that I had a mother tell me that their 12-year-old autistic child said that autistics don't have a culture, or that autism doesn't have a culture. Like, but it does. It does have a culture.
That's such an absurd statement.
Well, it's because this parent cannot come out to me and say, well, autism doesn't have a culture, autistics don't have a culture. They have to have their 12-year-old say it because then I am forced to argue with their child. And there is this belief that if you are arguing with a child, then, well, maybe you need to back off a little bit.
Okay.
Or that the child is also autistic, so they know. I'm like, they're 12. They're 12. Have they ever... What's their credit score? They're 12 years old. I know it's a weird way to put that, but it's like they're 12.
How many of your opinions at 12? Like, let's be really honest with ourselves here. How many of your opinions at 12 were just your parents' opinions? A lot of them.
Yeah.
Like an uncomfortable amount of them. I know I parroted a lot of what my parents said, and I didn't really get it, but...
Well, you believe that they know what they're talking about.
You trust your parents. Hey, I brought it back.
Very nice. I like that. That was great. Yeah, you do trust your parents. And that also, I think, I didn't even put this down in my notes here. Yes, I have notes. But
What?
yeah.
Weird.
But yeah, definitely, and this is something I should have put in here, but yeah, there is that schism you have whenever, depending on who your parents are and what they believe about neurodivergence and being autistic and disability, you may end up not trusting them because then when you find out, oh, you believe stuff that's not true and you're holding to it.
Well, it's so funny how we accept this in other sociology fields, like the concept of internalized misogyny, internalized homophobia. Those are scholarly accepted terms, right? Mm-hmm. The second's about internalized ableism. It's whatever, but I personally, I've told you this story before, I know, personally had to stop a fight from breaking out at work one time between two individuals, both autistic, one of whom is a staunch self-advocate, and one of who has been an ABA for a long time, whose parents have convinced them that they are not capable of holding down a job, despite the fact that, in my personal and professional opinion, probably could hold down a competitive job just fine, but doesn't believe they can. Who, I swear to God, said something along the lines of, I was normal before I was vaccinated. And I thought that this other autistic person was going to launch themselves across the table and fist fight this person. Because, that's the difference, right? It's what you've been taught. There's a certain level of, like, trust in yourself, even, that has to come for you to be able to step away from that initial trust of what your parents teach you.
Yes.
And, like, those of us who are trusted, how many times am I going to be able to say trust? We should have been keeping a tally.
I mean, it's the entire theme of it, so you probably say it about 6,000 times.
Like, the normal, quote unquote, but, like, in this case, I'm actually going to use it, normal, path that you get to take as an adult is, you are under your parents, and your parents teach you as best as they can, and they usually are. They are usually doing their best. And then you break out into the wider world, and hopefully you have the tools to make your own conclusions, make your own judgment calls. Right. But there's a trust that has to come first. You have to be trusted to be out on your own to start breaking away from that initial learning, right? So without that initial trust that you're capable of thinking for yourself and being out on your own, how are you going to branch out? How are you going to learn new things and make your own?
I mean, you're not. You're going to be, you're infantilized, and then you get things where their parents will say...
And it's internalized.
Yeah,
and then
the parents will say things like, what's going to happen to my child after I die? And I am my child's voice. It's like, you understand by saying that you don't trust your kid.
You rob them of the opportunity to learn to speak on their own.
Their autonomy,
whether that's speaking or any other form of communication.
Right. Well, when you say speak, I mean, I'm accepting all forms of that.
Well, yeah, I trust you to make that judgment call, but that's because I know you. I don't know these people.
I mean, they're all cool. The people who are listening, I'm sure, are just fine. Like, I don't know how far it goes, and I have not done the work to market it.
I'll trust my audience.
I don't have an advertising deal with Blue Chew or HelloFresh or whoever else.
Audible.com.
Yeah, none of that. No one's interested because no one's
Screw
really listening.
Audible. Download Libby. Get your local library's app. You don't need Audible.
Well, okay, there goes my sponsorship opportunity. I was going to make, tens of cents on this. But yeah, like there's not, we don't really have a society that operates on trust as much. There is definitely an amount of suspicion that happens in the society for so many folks that it's just, and it happens a lot more for the scrutiny that disabled folks, especially autistics, get put under.
Well, yeah, we're all sociopathic monsters, and not like actual sociopathy. It's, the weird Hollywood version.
We're either sociopathic monsters or we're children.
Yeah,
we don't ever grow up, and it's really, to me,
compassionate adults who are autistic. That's not a thing.
Yeah, it's entirely,
or even worse, like schizophrenic. Like, you want to branch out into the less talked about neurodivergencies. Like, you can't be a compassionate, kind adult with like a functioning brain if you're schizophrenic. That's scary.
Yeah, that's
never mind the many, anecdotal evidence being what it is, but the many schizophrenics I've known who are wonderful human beings, compassionate, kind.
There's lots of folks out there who are, and that's where also, and this is a little bit beyond the scope, but honestly, it's where for neurodiversity, it's where most neurotypicals don't understand what that means. We still struggle with the fact that people take it as a synonym for autistic or ADHD at most. Yeah. So.
But you know what the difference is between like a person who is a fully functioning adult, and by that I mean like a human being. Sorry, I'm losing the way I'm talking here. Hold on. Like the difference between like an adult who is schizophrenic, autistic, ADHD, DID, whatever's going on, who is thriving, who is visibly to other people, not just in their own mental space, but externally recognized as being capable and compassionate and autonomous, and a person who, you know, still has all that within them, but it's not externally validated. It's not capable of being shown in a way that's recognizable to their peers, I suppose. It's back to trust, right? Like, yeah. If you... I keep going back to schizophrenic because I don't think it gets talked about often enough. It's the more maligned one.
Right. It gets, you know, held up as, at best,
the big scary one.
It's big and scary, and it's associated with serial killers and the rest.
Right.
So.
What you get is, you know, when you have delusions, like that's one of the big things people know about. When you have delusions, how do you go through your day being able to, like, know what's real, what you can trust? It's when you can surround yourself with people who you know are going to support you and not tear you down. Like, that's the difference. If you're going to be able to get through your day and go through it and work and function in society, it's going to be based on the fact of, do you have a community of support?
Yeah. Do
you have the people you can turn to and be like, I feel like people are stealing my stuff. Is this a valid concern in this situation? And know that the person around you can be either like, yeah, I would keep a closer hand on your bag today, or no, we're amongst friends. You've known all these people all your life. We're not going anywhere. You're fine.
Well, and also there's not a larger in the disability community, and I'm including the wide swath of people who are neurotypical that are involved. The problem is you really cannot easily trust everyone.
No, you can't.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, and the irony being is how many disability organizations have neurotypicals and non-disabled folks leading them. Like, how many board directors, how many executives, how many others. Mm-hmm. It's oftentimes mostly led, and we wouldn't put up with that because it's not trustworthy. Like, you wouldn't.
Well, and those people, and like, it would even make a difference if it was neurotypical, non-disabled, whatever, if they were willing to put the trust in, the work in to be trusted.
Right.
Right? Like, it makes such a huge difference. There's so many people who just think that you owe them trust. You owe them respect.
Yes.
Like, I'm here. You're under my care, so you must trust me. That's not how that works.
No.
There are so many instances, like anybody who has been paying even the slightest iota of attention to anything their entire life, not to be hyperbolic, but like legitimately, knows that the people you're supposed to be able to trust, your parents, your pastor, your teacher, your support coordinator, that's not always going to be the case. There's so many instances, so many stories of people breaking that trust, using the power that they have to be horrific.
Yeah.
And so when you go in with the idea of, well, I'm in this position of power, therefore they have to trust me. No, you should be going in with the goal in mind of, I'm going to build that trust. That's why no matter what I do, like, the longer I'm at this job, the more everything I do is, I'm going to tell you straight out with no BS why you should do this. And I get weird looks. I get weird looks all the time because, like, I'll be talking to somebody I support and they're like, well, why do I have to do this? I'm like, I'm not going to lie. It's because of stupid bureaucracy things. Because sometimes people will take advantage of someone in your position and they don't know a way to make a law that will protect you in, like, specific circumstances. So they just protect you across the board, which means that no matter how comfortable you are, you still have to check this box.
Which is an honesty that you don't get much in other directions.
And I get the weirdest look from non-disabled people, but, like, it shows in that, like, I have a lot of individuals under my care who won't show anybody shit or talk to anybody, but they'll talk to me. because they know I'm not going to mess them around.
Yeah.
Like, again, I work at an arts-based program. And this is such a small example, but I think it's a good example, right? Like, I'll have people who won't show their art to anybody, right? But they'll show their art to me, and the reason is because when they show me the art, I don't go, oh, it's so wonderful, you're so talented, blah, 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 because that doesn't read as real to anybody.
No.
I'll be like, oh, man, I really like this. I think if you tweaked this line a little bit, notice how the arm looks a little off. I think that it's just a little skinny. Here, I'll stand in the pose for a second. You can kind of see how it should be bent. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you treat somebody with honesty and directness, you're going to build that trust over time.
Well, yeah, and also things like highlighting a certain aspect. Like, I like this specific part. This part really speaks to me. Yeah, that sort of thing. But also, it's like, we don't put up with white people being in charge of the NAACP. We don't put...
You're not wrong.
We highlight how just bonkers it is that there are men leading initiatives to have more inclusivity when it comes to women or women-centered organizations. We're like, why is the entire Senate committee full of just men? Which is not the case, but I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't really checked that, but this is a thing we don't tolerate in other spaces, but we still have not fixed this in the disability community.
No, because we're not capable of.
Right. It is that pathologization of, well, you are not capable of leading an organization, so we're going to do it for you. We're going to be your voice.
Just to be clear for the viewers at home, that was sarcasm, which I am actually capable of using.
Yeah.
What a weird stereotype that is.
I mean, it falls under the same thing as all the jokes, the harmful jokes. It's, and you get this stuff with autistics all the time of like, oh, you're autistic, you must have specific patterns or must do everything at a certain point. It's like, that flexes. It's not really entirely the case, but they don't know what to do when you say no. At best, they're just confused. At worst, you get things like, well, then I guess you're not like my child or something else, and that gets to be insane. But we'll cover that here in just a second. But really, I think that there is another question. And while we've talked about the trust thing, and we're going to talk about it more, I don't know when it happened, but did neurotypicals not trust autistics first, or were autistics not trusting neurotypicals first? Because before there was even the actual diagnostic criteria, before autism was even discovered by, I can't remember her name, but there was a Russian scientist. Everybody loves to credit, was it Lavos and others in the United States, and they like to credit Asperger, which we'll talk about here in a second. But there was definitely, there was a Russian woman scientist who did discover this, but her work got kind of pushed out because, surprise, surprise, she's a woman and also Russian, and so
we don't trust either of them.
Right. Well, we can't depend on that. Like, no, you're hysterical. No.
And a commie.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was like during the 1920s, so it is something to look up and check out. It is interesting, because her viewpoint was not that of Hans by any means or measures. It was definitely more of, these are unique individuals that we should be, figuring out and learning about, like we would various other cultures. So, but I don't know, which really came first? Did neurotypicals not trust us, or did we not trust neurotypicals?
It's such a double-edged sword, like the pathologizing, right? Because my knee-jerk feeling on it is, once we defined autistic as other, right? Mm-hmm. That's when the belief in our capabilities diminished, right?
Right.
But on the other hand, like, there are some, I don't want to diminish the genuine supports that are needed to function as an autistic in a neurotypical world, right? There are aspects that are genuinely difficult that, like, I'm a huge self-advocate. I like the way my brain works. I would not stop being autistic for all the world, because I think a lot of the cool things that make me me are tied so inherently to that. But there are aspects that suck. And it's so difficult to get help for something when you can't point to a reason you're that way, right? Like, the laziness, like, idea, right?
I hate that term so much. I wrote to hate,
we could go on that for a huge amount of time, and we have. But, like, it's the difference between saying, oh, you're lazy, and saying, oh, you suffer from executive dysfunction, right?
Right.
And, like, some people will still call it lazy because people are assholes. But, there is something to having it pathologized where you can get, like, a little bit of empathy for your situation, where you can be able to trade that in for assistance as opposed to being told to just deal. Right? So, like, I've been mocked before for, like, stimming for the hands, like, and I have anxiety on top of the autism. I have OCD and generalized anxiety disorder, and I refuse to, like, people expect me to, like, be quiet about that or whatever, or they call it trauma dumping if I just, like, lead with that if it's relevant to the conversation. And no, I'm destigmatizing it. It's not something to be ashamed of.
Right.
And I used to get, like, a lot of flack for moving my hands about when I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, or for needing to go somewhere quiet. But if you can be like, oh, well, I'm autistic and I suffer from overstimulation and I just need a couple minutes to myself to, like, calm down, or I need to wear my headphones for a little bit, but I'm perfectly capable of helping you with this situation. Just give me a second to do these small little things that will assist me with that. You don't get that when you don't have a diagnosis.
No.
You just don't. You just get told you're being ridiculous or overdramatic, or, and I got a lot of gendered stuff thrown at me. Non-binary, by the way. I don't think I said that in my little intro. But I am AFAB.
I did forget to ask your
pronouns. My pronouns are they, them.
There you go.
Well, it's because you know them.
Right, yeah. So it's like, I don't need to ask. What else is
But, I'm AFAB, and that's relevant here because, I don't think as a man you get overdramatic as a diminishing.
Not usually.
Like, that's not where they go. You get passionate, or you have anger issues, maybe. Like, it's not...
Not when you're neurotypical. When you are diagnosed, then they have a higher propensity, but not as much as female-presenting folks. Yeah, it's just,
got a lot of dismissal for what was going on with me. And, now that I am diagnosed and I'm in a healthy environment where I can trust the people around me, I can be like, hey, I need this in order to function. And be just trusted that that is the case. I do need that. I'm not just trying to inconvenience the people around me with my existence.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like that all kind of ties in. I actually did go over your... Because, again, he writes notes, folks. I did actually go over the notes, and I didn't see any mention of masking here. And I am particularly interested in masking when it comes to autism, because a lot of the anxiety that I experience stems from masking. I know I'm not alone. This is a very common journey for AFAB autistics who are late diagnosed. If you're a socialized female, you change yourself to make others comfortable. very frequently, and that is stressful. It is so stressful. Half the time you don't understand why you're doing it.
I mean, you are taught kind of inherently to a certain extent, even when you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, a large part of my journey since I've been diagnosed has been unmasking. And what a difference it has made. And, like, there is that trust factor, right? You're trusting the people around you to not belittle and mock you for the things you need to do to self-regulate that harm no one. It doesn't harm anyone for me to flap my hands when I'm excited. I like to lean into the most stereotypical one, but I do that. It's not...
Same, yeah.
To have to keep fidget toys at my desk, to tell my boss, hey, it's really loud in here and I'm starting to get overwhelmed. I'm just going to take a break outside for 5 minutes until I'm calm again, and then I'll come back and do my paperwork. And for my boss to trust me that that is something I need to do, that I will get my work done on time, because my boss trusts me to do that work and to self-regulate. I can trust myself to self-regulate. I don't put it off until I have a damn breakdown. Right? And that improves my home life. You know, I don't come home and my partner has to suffer from, like, my panic attack anger because I spent all of my emotional labor at work hiding the fact that I was stressed.
Which you dealt with at your previous job.
Oh my God, so bad. I waited tables at my previous job, which is already super hard. Because that's just masking the job. Like, that's hard mode masking.
Yeah.
Because your money depends on your ability to mask. But I also worked in an incredibly conservative environment with incredibly cruel people. And, it was a nightmare. And I took it out. I did. I took it out on my friends and my family, the people I was close to, because I could trust them. I'm just going to say trust as many times as I can. I've taken out as a personal...
This isn't the entire impetus of the episode.
Right, but, like, I could trust them to not leave me for lashing out at them, and that's not okay. That was not okay of me to do. It's understandable.
Yeah.
But, like... when I reached a point where people trusted me to get through the day and to do the things that I needed to do, and I could trust myself to react in ways that were comfortable for me and know that the people around me wouldn't leave me for that, or I wouldn't get fired, or, you know, when I could have that trust in my supports, then I had the luxury of looking at myself and going, you know what? You could be doing better. You're being unfair to the people around you. You are capable of being more flexible with this, of taking a break when you need it without being a jerk about it. You know, you get more trust in yourself when you can, like, lean on the area around you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that also is, there's elements here of certain, like, demonstrations of a lack of trust or betrayals of that trust to a certain extent, because you think and you grow up being told, you know, you can trust certain people, you know, you can trust your parents, you can trust others. And then as you move through, that feels like that changes. I know I called it a betrayal. I don't think it's entirely a betrayal. I feel like there is just what you're told and what is actually the case.
Well, and you get taught to trust certain entities that you shouldn't be taught to trust. There's that too, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know how political you're comfortable with me getting on
I don't
this.
care. Go
right,
ahead.
Cool. So, like, a lot of kids are taught when they're young to trust the police.
Or the church.
Yeah, and to devastating effect. We're a very vulnerable population in both of those situations.
There's an entire subject right there. The police do not trust autistics at all. There is definitely, there is no trust there at all. Yeah.
Right. So, like, you know, that's how you get into a situation where you get, like, an autistic kid getting shot while having a meltdown.
For running away from the police.
Yeah, because the police are fucking scary.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's...
Well, you can't trust them to not react with lethal force or violent force.
And I feel like that's something that people do understand inherently, right? Like, you know, at least certain demographics. Like, I know that the Black population understands inherently, oh yeah, you can't teach kids to trust the police. That can get them killed.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, I feel like that's a great illustration of what I'm talking about when I say, like, you know, trust has to be built. It has to be earned. And, like, it is dangerous to just expect anyone to take you at your word when you say, you need to trust me.
Yeah. I think there's also an element of that there is that feeling of betrayal that you get to a certain extent as an autistic person, where you're like, why am I being lied to? And for some autistics, it gets to be so much. There's like, who the hell can I trust? And why were they lying to me? Why was this such a thing?
God, we get lied to so often. You get lied to, oh, you're going to school. They value intelligence and facts in school. And then you don't understand why you're constantly getting in trouble for politely correcting the teacher when they're wrong. Shouldn't the teacher respect?
Yeah, but you're not bowing to authority.
Right, but that's not explained to you.
It is inherent. It is implied. And that goes back to the trust of, like, I mean, you are even told that you must obey your teacher.
I feel like every autistic has that story, right?
Oh,
that, like,
God, so
that
much.
first time they got in trouble and they didn't understand why.
Yeah, where the teacher is absolutely wrong because the teacher assumes something.
English professor in college tell me to my face that the definition of a fairy tale is that it had a happy ending.
Which is not the case.
And then I got in trouble when I was like, what about Grimm's fairy tales? What?
Yeah, they're not happy endings. It's lying inherent to neurotypicality. Let's just get direct on that. Let me stereotype an entire group of people based on their lack of disability. Is lying inherent to neurotypicality?
Like, I kind of want to say yes, because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about this genuinely and honestly, right? And I'm thinking, I'm not neurotypical and I lie. I've lied before. I've used to lie quite a lot, actually. And then I'm thinking about, okay, but why did I lie? And it was always to make a neurotypical comfortable. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it was always to avoid dealing with some situation I didn't understand where I had been proven again and again and again that if I'm honest, I'm going to get punished.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So, like, okay, for self-preservation reasons, I guess I'll play your game. I guess I'll lie. And it's their game, right?
Yeah.
It's their game. It's not my game.
No.
If I had my way, I would tell you exactly what I thought as kindly as possible, because I don't believe in being unkind.
No. Not at all.
Like, but I'm going to tell you straight up what I think. And you're going to leave me alone to do my job to the best of my ability. And we're all going to be happier and more efficient. At least in a perfect world, right? But I can't do that. I have to lie all the time. Because there are consequences to not lying, and they're inherent to neurotypicality.
Yeah.
It's always to spare some neurotypical's feelings. I can't, like, look at a guardian and be like, the reason she doesn't talk at home is because you won't shut up and let her answer questions. I can't say that, because then they'll get upset and they'll pull the person from my program, and then that person's not going to get the benefit of being in my program. So I got to be like, oh, I got to gentle parent these fuckers, right? I got to be like, oh, here, this is kind of what we do. I found that this really works. Have you tried? And, like, I just want to be like, the problem is you. And I don't mean that in a mean way.
No, because it's not inherent
But they don't trust that.
Yeah, it's not inherent to who they are. It's not unchangeable. It's just maybe, you are the problem. Here's what you can do to fix it. But they don't take that. They get very emotional with that.
Right. And, like, I don't know how many people, like, oh my God, a big fucking thing in disabled people who require extra supports. Because that's the people that I work with, right? They require extra supports, and that's fine. But, like, a thing I've noticed a lot is this inherent need to apologize. all the time. Just constantly apologizing for things. And again, because I have built that trust over a long period of time, I can say to somebody who's going, I'm sorry, are you mad at me? I'm sorry. And I can be like, have I, in the past, told you when I'm upset with you? And they can be like, yeah, you straight up said, I am frustrated with you because XYZ. I'm like, cool, have I told you I'm upset with you now? No. So what's your conclusion there? You're not upset with me. Yeah, absolutely. But there still has to be that moment of reassurance, right? Because other people in their past have told them, I'm not upset with you. And then shown through their actions that they're upset.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if this is also, if there's a cultural impact of this, because, like, I don't know if every, and I know that, yes, there are exceptions, like, not every neurotypical is a liar or will engage in dishonesty, but at least in Western cultures where autism is pathologized to hell and back, there is definitely that big indicator, like, that this is something that is endemic to the society.
Yeah.
We lie about, oh, well, it's just a cold.
And it's that concept of the white lie, right? And, like, what's the, like, because, like, I forget what the
God, what a
term
racial
is.
implication there, too, for that as well.
Shut up.
Just a little white lie. It's not like a
But, like,
other lie.
explain, God damn it. Like, there's that concept, right? The never, I forget what the term is, but the never suspect malice where ignorance is as likely, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a big field of lying where the idea is you're not wanting to hurt somebody's feelings, right? And, like, there's so much of that. And, like, we have this inherent, as a society, not us, we as a society,
Right.
don't like negative emotions.
No.
They're awful. It's wrong to be angry. It's wrong to be sad. Whatever. When really, that's a neutral thing. Everyone's angry. Everyone's sad. It happens. It's what you do with it, right? Mm-hmm. Which is why I will not shy away from telling somebody, yeah, I'm a little angry at you. You told me this and then you did this. And I feel like you broke your promise to me. Or, yeah, I'm a little angry. You made this person uncomfortable when you hugged them without asking first. And because it's my job to make sure that everyone in my care is comfortable and happy, I feel like you're making my job hard. So I'm mad.
Exactly.
And then I can follow that up, that honest statement up with, I know you probably didn't intend to make that person uncomfortable. So I need you to remember better in the future to, like, really be aware that it makes people uncomfortable when you hug without asking.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, this is why. This is what you need to do in the future. And also, if you give me 5 minutes, I'll calm down and I won't be mad at you anymore. And then follow through, right?
Yeah.
Like, follow through with that. But, like, when that person comes to me later and is like, are you mad at me? They're going to believe me more when I'm like, would I tell you if I was mad at you? Yeah, you would. Well, there you go then.
Yeah.
Because I'm not mad, and then punishing them the rest of the day by, like, not talking to them and, like, you know. Because you do that. You do that when you're mad. It's an inherent, you're not going to be able to hide the fact that you're mad.
No.
You're not. No matter how good you think you are at it, you're just not going to be able to hide it.
Yeah.
So, like, people don't do that, not because they're lying, quote unquote.
Right.
But they're going to lie and say they're not mad because they don't want to be seen as an angry person.
No.
They don't want to hurt the person's feelings.
No, of course not.
Like, I can be mad at somebody and know it's not really their fault that they did the thing I'm mad at them for. So, like, I've been, on occasion, like, that's another example, like, a totally different person where I've said, I'm really frustrated and angry with you, but I recognize that that's not fair of me. That it's partially because I came into this day stressed, and you also came into this day stressed, and you're yelling at me, and that's making me scared and stressed and angry back. And you have as much of a right to be angry as I have a right to be angry. It is not your fault that I am angry. But as a result, I can't deny the fact that I'm angry, and I'm going to say something to you that you don't deserve. So I'm going to remove myself from the situation, and I need you to give me space. I can set boundaries.
Yes.
And I can, like, state my feelings. Like, if I don't feel shame for being angry, then I can say that I am angry without adding all these strings or whatever. I can say, yeah, I'm angry. I can recognize that that's not fair. I'm going to remove myself. We're going to start again in a minute.
Yeah. You can at least, like, take a step back and be like, I need 5 minutes. I need a little bit because it's...
Exactly.
I know you didn't mean to do this, but...
And that's good because, one, it's good for me to recognize, to be able to, like, if I'm not trying to hide my anger desperately out of fear of consequences, I can take the steps that I need to better myself, to work towards a more constructive way of dealing with whatever situation, because anger is a secondary emotion, according to my de-escalation training.
Really?
Yeah. Weirdly enough, my underpaid ass gets de-escalation training. Cough, cops, cough. But, like, you know, I can more easily recognize, like, what got me there, what I need to do to take care of it, how best to handle the situation. And then I can demonstrate that for the people who are in my care who also need a little bit of support in learning that because nobody's teaching it to them. And I know that this story has been all over the place.
No, I think there's a lot to unpack here. This is why why literally this is just one topic. There's so much there is going on with it.
So much.
It covers a lot because I feel that there's a huge lack of trust. Whenever you don't get a job or you're put in a place of a job and you haven't demonstrated that you can't be trusted, but you're not because of that diagnosis, or you are also, and I didn't put this down, but I probably should have, but there is an element of you're not like my child that you hear from parents, or, oh, well, you're verbal, which is not the correct connotation. It's actually speaking or non-speaking. And that was brought about by non-speaking autistics who were like, I can yell, I can shout, I can make certain vocal noises. I just have difficulty forming specific words. So I utilize, other forms of communication. Because I hate it so much. Like, oh, well, you're verbal and they're non-verbal. It's like, really?
It's also such a strange, like, I hadn't even known that this was a thing until you brought it up recently.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But it is also such a strange delineation to make verbal and non-verbal. Because, like, I know people who speak who are verbal speakers,
mm-hmm.
right? But all they do is they repeat what you said.
Right.
Right? There's not... And to get, like, clear communication of wants and needs and whatnot, I have to pay attention to the gestures, or I have to offer ways for them to clearly signify a choice besides just saying yes or no.
Are they classified as nonverbal then, or?
No, I don't know, because we don't really use those terms.
Which is good.
So much.
Yeah.
I mean, we use nonverbal occasionally, like, when we're talking about people who just genuinely don't talk, but it's usually, like, in the context of, oh, man, you're gonna have better luck writing them a note. They're not really verbal, just...
Right, yeah, it's something that's still kind of new, but also it gets opposed because, and this comes around to certain restrictive bias diagnoses and diagnostic tools, is... It's not just singularly about spoken language.
Mm-hmm.
The verbal and nonverbal, those are used to also, and it's subtle because you have to really pay attention to it, but it is utilized to differentiate between autistics who have autonomy and those who neurotypicals deem to not have autonomy. Well, if you're non-speaking or non-verbal, then, well, you can't make decisions for yourself. You can't work a job. You can't do this. You can't do that.
Let's call a fish, right? Let's
Yeah.
call it what it is. If you're not speaking my language the way I prefer it to be spoken, it's too difficult for me to understand you.
Yeah,
I don't have the patience.
And that is so inherent to a lot of neurotypicals, and it's also used to force people like you and I out of discussions regarding autism and policy and even things like the DSM. There is a push by specific organizations, which I don't need to reference here.
We'll curse them in our dark rituals later.
Sure. I mean, in my day job, I definitely have pushed back because some of their information regarding certain policies that are currently in Congress is being utilized to push back on those policies, which the policies aren't great. They're not great policies, but they're definitely decent and need to be renewed. But these are basically the people that use that information don't realize just how bad they are. What they want to do is they want to bring back the DSM-4 delineations of categories of autism because they look at the current umbrella that you have for autism spectrum diagnosis and have come to the erroneous conclusion that, well, all of these speaking autistics are getting resources and help, and my child is not. The irony here, the sheer irony is that it does come back to trust and language of, well, but the speaking autistics are speaking the language. And automatically, then they're not given more resources. They are just listened to.
It is so difficult.
Yeah.
It's so difficult. Even as a speaking, I'm going to add in late diagnosed to that.
Yeah.
Because I had to learn this stuff, sink or swim, right?
Yeah.
It's so difficult to find the resources that you need. I would love some help. And, it's, and my parents, they do great. My parents are wonderful. But, they don't know shit about this stuff. And I was already an adult when I got diagnosed, so I've been mostly finding it on my own through my community and through whatever. But, I don't know that my mom would have had the spoons, the energy to, look into the resources that I was needing because she had to work. She had to, so...
Well, not to mention all of the different... all the fact that the resources that are available now weren't available when you were younger.
True.
Not to mention the autistic advocacy that was around.
And on various end of the spectrums, right? So you get people whose parents actively avoid letting them grow and letting them find these resources. So they're not getting the resources because the parents are avoiding the resources.
Right.
But then you've got I think one of the best self-advocates that I've ever personally met. One of I'm humbled and in awe of the amount of work that this person does in self-advocacy and the amount of direct action and being involved in the politics of it all and all this stuff. Non-speaking, uses an AAC device. It has supports. Uses just has a lot of supports actually, but has a parent that had the means to look into this stuff and give them the tools to then become a self-advocate, and does not fit the demographic at all that these people are saying.
No.
It's just, it has next to nothing to do with your capabilities of fitting a specific mold and everything to do with the supports that are around you.
Yeah, it is such a problem when it is differentiated because there are, I know, speaking autistics who have many different support needs. They are high support needs, but they are speaking autistic. So then it is assumed that, well, they either have supports or that they can get what they need. And there are non-speaking autistics who have lower support needs. All they need really is the AAC device. And I think it points to just so much of the, oh, well, you get resources, we don't. And therefore, if we separate you, then we could get some of these resources back. It's like you've never had those resources. They've never been here. They have not been anywhere near close over the past 40 years.
Well, and tell me this, because I'm almost certain I know the answer to this, despite the fact that I don't think we've talked about this before, right?
Okay.
You are a big self-advocate. You have been active in these groups for a long time.
Yes.
Have you met someone who would fit the outdated definition, high-functioning autistic? Person with high-functioning autism. Let's really lean into the outdated terminology here.
All right.
Have you ever met a person with high-functioning autism, as defined by this BS, who would fit the out-of-date concept of a person with high-functioning autism who, one, actually probably needed supports that they weren't getting and didn't know how to ask for, or maybe were too ashamed to ask for, and two, would have genuinely benefited from interacting more with people who would have been considered low functioning and getting that different perspective and seeing the many ways in which we are more similar than we are unsimilar. Because again, as we know, high functioning, low functioning as labels has nothing to do with our support needs. Next to nothing. Like, it's entirely based on how much of an inconvenience you are to the working majority, right? Like, this is well tread ground. But like, I have known personally lots of people who consider themselves above their peers, and they have a lot of similar problems, a lot of similar needs. They're just manifesting in different ways. And I think it drives a wedge in our community, right? There are things I have learned. See, I asked you a question and then I immediately started answering it myself. You see what I did there?
I mean, honestly, yes, I have. I volunteer at a leadership academy for disabled teenagers. And it's designed to promote leadership skills, have an understanding of the disability civil rights movement, a lot of very much proactivism and improving things and getting away from ableism. But this past year, we had a couple of folks who, specifically one who is autistic, who was... basically they're like, well, I don't really match with anyone else here. I'm not like anyone else here. I'm different in ways of like, basically it was heavily implied I'm not as disabled as these other people.
I'm better. Like, let's cut through it. It's the idea that I'm better.
And it wasn't I feel as though I'm better. It's, well, I am better because
everyone's always told me I am.
Well, it's not that at all.
No.
It's I'm able to do these things and therefore I need less support, and that's a good thing. Because having high support needs is a bad thing.
Which it's such an infuriating concept. And maybe this is the artist in me, but there is no one on the planet who doesn't benefit from perspectives other than their own.
Right. I mean, this person was definitely, they called themselves high-functioning autistic or high-functioning person with autism. And what really got me was when they said, I just need to, adapt or change my, my autism and be more normal, and basically arguing that they need to suppress it. I'm like,
right. And that's when you start punishing yourself, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
when you start going, well, I shouldn't need a break. And you push through. And I am a better worker now. I am a better, like, not that that is the metric by which we measure things, but it is the metric by which we measure things. It shouldn't be.
No.
But we're not ready for the anti-capitalism rant today.
No.
But, like,
that's a whole
I actually
different
take
subject.
a lot of pride in being a hard worker, in that I think my job is important and should be done well because I care about the people in my care. Genuinely care about those who have entrusted me with their goals and their needs, right? I think there's a lot of value to what I do, and I take pride in doing it well. I am better at my job since I started allowing myself to be weak, right?
Or at least know what your needs are.
Yes, because I now know that I can tell my boss, I need 5 minutes. I'm overwhelmed. I'm freaking out. I need 5 minutes. That 5 minutes saves so much time, right? Like, I then am more productive the rest of the day and am better capable of helping the people in my care because I took 5 minutes for myself, because I took that time to calm down. And I wouldn't have done that before. I would have powered through, and I would have spent the rest of the day at 70% capability, and it still would have gotten done, but not as well.
I mean, how many times did you power through working tables?
Oh, God, so many times, and wrecked myself. Mentally and physically wrecked myself.
Yeah.
And,
this person just, when I heard, it's like, I just need this, and then I'll be more normal, and there was a lot of overcoming, and a lot of, I can sort of basically, like, they were looking at this as though it was disease, and there is that pathologization you get so much where it gets, they don't say it's a disease, but there is definitely an element that is very medical modelly that is there. And I was like, you need to stick around and interact with your fellow peers. It would be good for you because they're not different from you in certain aspects. It's just you've been on the internet, you've been in certain spaces, and you get rewarded. And that is one of the biggest things. I think it's kind of a lie.
And I don't think those people
rewarded for
realize,
being,
Yeah, and I don't think they realize what they're losing, right?
No.
You're losing out on so much of the positive when you refuse to acknowledge the negative.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think that I'm trying to think of a good example of something that is universally known to be like, yeah, that kind of sucks. Overstimulation. My overstimulation tends to come in the form of audio. I'm very prone to audio overstimulation. But the other side of that is I have an amazing audio memory. If you said it, I probably remember it. Maybe even word for word. Like, I can quote, I don't know how much, movies and, like, lyrics and, that's the cute, fun side of it. But there's, practical applications to it, too. And I don't think that I'd be capable of that if my ears weren't so sensitive to sound. Right? But that's also what causes the overstimulation. But if I were to suppress it, if I was to, like, really train myself out of hearing everything around me, I'd lose a lot of what makes me a really capable.
Well, and even if it's possible, and I'm like, for a lot of this, it's not possible. You think it may be, but
you're dead and you're just numbing yourself.
Well, and also eventually you will get overwhelmed, and you will have burnout.
The levee will
have
break.
Meltdown. And that's where, for this guy, I'm just like, you don't understand and you're not learning. Which the weird thing was, this was like literally the same day that we had the disability civil rights movement. And there was a lot of talk about what this looks like, of why we have been, why there is such a focus on curing.
Yeah.
And that's also coming into effect with when it comes to, like, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just crossing my fingers to, like, put a pin in the fact that I had a thought. I didn't want to interrupt your thought.
No, go ahead. You're good.
Well, there's also the aspect of when you start seeing yourself as different from this person by standards that are made up by somebody else who doesn't understand the internal struggle, right?
Right.
You're dehumanizing them, and you are in turn dehumanizing yourself by saying, oh, yeah, I'm better because I can do this, this, and this. Again, it's not going to change the fact that you are still getting overstimulated, that you're still struggling to pick up on indirect conversation, that you are, what are some other common, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's so much that goes on.
All the various little, like, bits and pieces that make up the tapestry. Because you have this narrative that you are a different kind, then you stop giving yourself the grace for the things that are the same with those that you've now learned are different and other and lesser.
Yeah.
And then you're going to struggle. You're not going to get those resources that you need. You're not going to get the help that you need because you're not allowed to need that help. You're different. You're better.
The gatekeeping of accessibility and accommodations.
Right, and it's self-gatekeeping half the time, which is what's so extra sad about it. Right?
Well,
that's where I was trying to go earlier.
Yeah.
That was the crux of it. It's like, you're gonna... That's why it crosses the aisle, right? Between the high functioning and the low functioning or whatever. Why it's not an indication of how good of a self-advocate you're gonna be. Because there isn't a difference. It's just whether or not you're willing to define yourself by these arbitrary standards made by people who don't understand what you're going through and aren't willing to listen.
Well, and who want to just kind of eliminate this. Like, well, they want to eliminate disability. They want to... Which the thing is, you're not going to be able to unless you find a way to even get rid of aging. And even then, there are certain things that happen. Like, if you break a leg, you are disabled at that point. But we're
just aiming for entropy, is what it is.
Yeah.
We're gonna hit 0 Kelvin. We're gonna break physics.
Yeah, that'll work. That'll fix our problems as a society. But no, it was really sad. It was really, really.
Can't have a broken society if there's no society to break. Sorry,
exactly.
I'm done.
You're good.
Just like society.
Yeah. Boom. It was really sad and disappointing because I'm like, you understand yourself, but also you don't know what's about to hit you. And you look at yourself and decide that when you have meltdowns or burnout or you encounter issues that...
It's a moral failing.
It's a moral failing and you're just not trying hard enough. Mm-hmm. And that the penultimate is to be neurotypical, which it's not. Especially in this society, it's like, well, but what you think is normal is what you've been told, but that's only because it grants you certain entry into certain areas. You are allowed to, you get hired in certain jobs, you find housing, you get involved in certain community organizations, you make certain friends, you socialize.
So funny about all of this, and by funny I mean sad, is this is true of humanity. This isn't just true of neurodivergence. This is true of humanity. We are a pack species, right? We're a pack bonding species. That's what we are. We exist in communities for a reason. The way we're broken up is unnatural. It's entirely manufactured.
Yeah.
To make more money, really.
Yeah, you divide people and then they each person has to buy a hammer for themselves.
Exactly. It's the hammer thing. See, that was exactly where my brain was at.
Nice.
We have this whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which again, hilarious idiom because it's supposed to be impossible. That's the joke. You're using it wrong. You can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You need community. You need help. And there is nothing shameful or wrong about needing it. And neurotypicals know that, is the funny thing, right? They know that because that's what they teach you in kindergarten. That's what, like, you watch a children's program, that's all of the messaging. Ask for help when you need it. It's okay.
But
we don't know how to help you unless you speak that ask for help.
But do we compartmentalize that to just children?
Yes, that's the thing. The neurotypicals, they know that it's needed for children. But then they buy into this weird manufactured propaganda, the lies, that, you know, adults don't need that. You should be able to handle it on your own. Never ask for help. That's why we have, especially with men, a mental health crisis, right? Like, genuinely, mental health in men is such a horrible, horrible state because they don't think that they're allowed to get affection or assistance. Right? Like, it all comes down to the fact that we need each other. We need help. We need support.
Yeah,
but we pathologize and we, like, break it up. It's like, oh, but only kids, right? And then it's, oh, but you're actually like a kid. So you need help, but I don't, because I'm an adult. And the neurotypicals need just as much help, just with different things.
Right, but if they have to admit that, then they have to fall under the same pathologization.
And they have to admit that maybe we're not so different.
But then how do you, then you cannot restrict resources.
Exactly. And again, they know it. You know they know it because they teach it in kindergarten. Our differences make us better. Every snowflake is unique. Every, whatever. They like, but now it's like seen as like cutesy and naive and silly. Why? Why is it cutesy and naive? Why is justice?
Because then we cannot...
the realm of children.
We can't divide and receive more resources. Because the argument that some disabled folks need more supports than others is true. Yeah. It is absolutely the case. But the problem is that there is an inherent demand to restrict those, and if you don't prove it, then we're not going to give you them. Because, well, what if you just... what if you just use them all? Just listen to, like, you don't need them.
Literally anyone when you say the phrase government support and watch the derision across their face. And I'm sorry, what the fuck is the point of the government if it's not to support you, the citizen? Why am I paying taxes?
It's to keep the borders up so that we can divide the planet's resources.
Right. Yeah. See, it all just, it's all so asinine.
We've taken a slippery slope into...
See, this is why they don't actually like us to speak for ourselves, is because we know we're going to point out all the bullshit.
Yeah.
They don't trust us not to tear this government down brick by brick. Viva la revolution.
I mean, really, what I would like is just...
I have the spoons for that. I'm exhausted.
Yeah. No, it is exhausting. But even with that, you have things like the fact that Asperger gets hailed as the one who discovered it, which is not true.
Ugh,
but the fact that, and we're going to say it, Hans Asperger was a Nazi. Now, was he Goebbels like? No. Because there was a spectrum of Nazis.
I mean, feel like if the best thing you can say about somebody is, well, they're not Goebbels. Oof. Talk about a low bar to clear. Yeah.
Right, yeah. I mean,
sounds like people I've known defending their boyfriends. Like, well, he hasn't been to jail, so...
He's not Ted Bundy, so, he's not Jeffrey Dahmer. He isn't trying to eat me, so... The fact that with Asperger's clinical notes, and there is the fact that his scientific research shapes how we view it, how we have viewed autism for so long. I mean, literally, he was looking at white male children. Why? Well, because this is the Nazi regime, and anyone who doesn't fall under that is lesser. Like, there is a lot of misogyny in...
and queerphobia.
And queerphobia in the Nazi regime. And so it's like, well, of course he would only be studying white male children. That doesn't mean that only white male children have it.
They were just the only ones that he was willing to admit had worth.
Well, not to mention the fact it was only those who had lower support needs. The rest of them were sent off to a farm upstate. I'll put it very nicely for that. But yeah, you had that. And so there has been a problem when it comes to autism of how where we credit the discoveries and who gets them has colored so much of what autism is. I mean, you have Ivar Lavas, also another white man, not a Nazi, making that clear. but also other white men. How many white men have been credited with autism discoveries? Despite the fact that you had literally a Russian scientist woman who really kind of made the first discovery of this but was not credited with it before Asperger's. So I think that factors into a lot of the trust, because then it's, well, you're a woman, you can't be autistic, or, well, you're black, you can't be autistic. And these are things that then cause us to not trust medical professionals, because they're adhering to an obsolete, antiquated, and definitely bigoted by stereotypes perspective. They don't even know they're really doing that necessarily, but they're not challenging it. Even the linear model, ranging from severe to mild, was never really a thing, but also resorting to functional descriptions, even based on economic ability. Can you get a job? Can you live independently on your own? Then you are high functioning, or as it should be appropriated to, low support needs. But that doesn't mean you don't need supports. What I've encountered the most is that, based upon my own economic independence, because I've been extremely fortunate, I don't get various supports because they have to have you spend down. Well, if we give you those supports and you have money, then we're giving you more than others. Then you are, we need to have you spend down and reduce your income and your money, so that way you need the supports, because otherwise, why wouldn't you just pay for it?
Well, let's talk about the irony of you need more support, so by law you get less.
Yes, you are.
Right?
You're required to have less.
You're required to have less if you need more support, because that makes sense.
Well, I mean, it's designed to be restrictive to those with the most need, but then this is designed so that way, well, we especially during, and I'm going to say it because it's true, the Reagan era and the welfare queen stereotype, that expanded to disabled folks who were not seen as disabled enough.
Exactly. And so, I am getting more support now that I am more capable of supporting myself than I ever would have had access to before, right? Like, I need therapy. I absolutely need. It is a need, not a want, not a luxury. It is a need. I need therapy to learn the tools to get through my day. I need it. I didn't have access to that until I was capable of holding down a job that had benefits. I couldn't afford therapy.
Not out of pocket, no.
Not out of pocket. And we've got all these people who are getting Medicaid waivers to get supports. Great. Good. Excellent. It is so complicated. There are so many rules. These are people who don't have the means to navigate a heavily legal system. It is made more complicated for the people who need it to be less complicated. So what does that even mean at this point, right? Low support needs, high support needs. What does it mean at this point? Because what you receive in assistance is in no way, shape, or form related to what you need in assistance.
Right, yeah. And this also, as a trust issue, it's like, we don't trust you to earn enough and also use the supports and not... The trust there is weird, because it's like, well, if
you're not capable.
I'm not getting a Bentley from the United States federal government to get me around. Like, that's not the case at all.
You're not capable of doing X, Y, and Z, but you are absolutely capable of running a scam on the government and taking advantage of our kind nature. You know what I mean? It's so
which I'm like
weird.
Which, here's the thing, and this is, I've met disabled folks who could work, but they don't, and they've figured out how to work within the system. And
good for them.
Well, they're not making tons of money. They're not living a lavish lifestyle.
They've made a genuine calculation.
Well, it's also, working kind of sucks depending on what you're working at.
Yeah.
And also work could be more disabling. If you're working at...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You've
Yeah.
made a calculation. You've looked at the situation and realized...
If you're working at a giant retailer...
This will do me more
yeah.
harm in the long run.
Yeah, if you're working for a giant retailer that ships across the country, that shares a name with a form of environment, you're going to end up with a lot of physical related injuries depending on what you're doing. You know, if that's
Well,
the case,
if I kept
then
waiting
fuck it, why
tables,
not?
I probably would have had a mental breakdown and would be completely incapable of working.
Yeah, that was a rough time for you.
It was.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know. It's just...
I think it boils back to trust because there is a
does.
lack of trust there.
It
And then on
does.
top of that, you have so much that
We don't
we
trust
encounter.
you with money. We don't trust you to marry. We don't trust you to...
We don't trust you to drink. We don't trust you to do this. We don't trust you to receive benefits. And like it also compounds when you have so much that inherently signals that there's not trust. There's, you know, the focus on prevention, which is the new buzzword for a cure. They now say prevention or identifying the causes.
Call it
and
what it is. It's
intervention.
eugenics.
I mean, they're looking at it. They're like, well, if we look at the causes, then we can kind of address them and treat them. It's like, but then that's a cure, right? Because you don't find the cause of why your car is malfunctioning and go, oh, well, then I'll take better care of it. No, you eliminate the cause. If you have spark plugs that are failing, you change the spark plugs and you cure your car of its problem. But things like cures and fixes and various treatments and like therapies like ABA.
It's very autistic of you to make this a car metaphor, by the way.
I mean, it's. I feel like it's a simple one to understand.
And really what...
You know, and you have things like...
Well, and I mean, to, like, muddy the metaphor, sorry. But, like,
Yeah, go
really
ahead.
what we're doing is, we need to find a cure for the fact that this car isn't,
it won't stay
isn't
between the
taking
lines.
gas. Is
Yeah.
it, like, I can't put gas in this car. It's like, yeah, your problem is that it's an electric car. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what it is,
So
right?
we convert it
they're
over
trying
to
to
gas.
eliminate
We can-
electric cars.
Yeah, we convert it to gasoline because,
And
well,
the problem isn't
yeah.
that it's not taking gas.
Yeah.
The problem is that you're trying to put gas in an electric car instead of just plugging it the fuck in.
Well, but we don't have we don't have the supports for that. So
Right.
it's
There's
easy,
not
it's
a lot
easier
of
to just-
charging stations.
Right,
And
so
it's
it's easier-
just so inconvenient.
Right. Well, it's easier to put the car through that, changing it over to gasoline. You're like, but if you just add more charging stations, no, that's too expensive. Which, comparatively, it probably would be. However, it would benefit the other electric vehicles. Actually, that's a very apt metaphor, to be honest. That's
Thank you.
really, really good. I got to write that one down.
But that's what
yeah,
it is, right?
yeah.
And, like, I'm not saying that gas-powered cars are wrong or bad. I am a little. But wouldn't it benefit
We can't trust them.
everyone?
We can't trust the gas power.
Wouldn't it benefit everyone if we just allowed the electric cars to have, like, a more capability and then, like...
No, because if we make more charging stations, we won't make as many gas stations. There's a scarcity we have to impose.
What reason would we have to invade the Middle East?
I mean, wow, that was it was a reach, but it was there. I got it. I followed you.
But you get what I'm saying.
I'm just more of the internal domestic
You're stuck on
infrastructure.
the wrong problem. And
Yeah.
really, you've got all these people who want to, like, eliminate electric car dealerships rather than just admit that maybe it'd be easier just to put some, like, that electric cars should be an option for people who want to have electric
Yeah.
cars. And to
There's
make
so
it easier
oh
on
my
them,
God,
let's
it
put
works so
some
well.
electric charging stations
Well,
more frequently.
There's so many other implications because look at the therapies, for example. It's if we allow or permit autistics to be themselves to a certain extent, I mean, same for electric vehicles. You don't need spark plugs in an electric vehicle. You don't need a fuel filter in an electric vehicle. You do not need...
What about the job industry? You're taking
What
advantage
about
of
all
the government assistance for electric...
All the businesses that depend upon gasoline cars existing now, then we'd be out of a job. And that's the same... And I cannot wait to hear that stuff from all of the ABA industry.
Well, and then there's, like, some genuine, like, problems with electric vehicles, too, right? Like, there was the problem of it was too quiet and...
They had to make a sound, which...
Right. Because it was posing a bit of a danger. It was an actual genuine issue. So, an accommodation was made.
You deal with range anxiety. Oh my God, anxiety.
You get what I'm saying?
Electric cars deal with range anxiety.
And they're like pointing at these, well, electric vehicles have this problem, and what if this happened? And that's why electric vehicles shouldn't exist. And you're just sitting here going, no, those are problems. We can fix those problems.
That's such an apt metaphor. I didn't realize we were getting how that is honestly amazing. I'm at the conference
Look, I'm an English major. I love a metaphor.
But it works so well. I mean, at the conference that you attended last year and that will be held in next year, I think that there should be some sort of presentation or something about that. We should discuss that because it's a good metaphor because no one views electric cars as inherently bad. They're just different. Yeah. What do your needs require?
And it's still a car, and it needs some of the same things that other cars need, but some other problems that cars have.
The braking systems are the same. Yeah.
It's exactly that. And that's why, because I was sitting here thinking, I'm like, what's the problem with this metaphor? Because, you do need to fix a spark plug. That is a thing that needs to be fixed. Mm-hmm. The fact that a car is electric is not a thing that needs to be fixed.
Yeah. It's so apt for that. And it's the things like social skill, scripting, various medications.
Then you have the problem that, all these mechanics are only trained on the gas cars. And you keep getting sent to a mechanic and they don't actually know how to deal with electric cars. So you're getting really bad advice from these mechanics because they're on the DSM-4. I mean, they're on the gas-powered...
They've got the
I will beat the dead horse here with this metaphor. I can go all day.
We're gonna have to write that as a presentation because I think that goes so far because people can understand it even if they don't know vehicles. They understand the metaphor, but all of it I think wraps up into there is a lack of trust there. We don't. It is inherently saying, and to continue the metaphor, we don't trust electric vehicles, and people see that. But also with the same thing, you have so much focus on the autistic person themselves rather than the environment around them, society around them, the viewpoints by neurotypicals. It's like, no, we need to fix you because we don't trust you. It's like, but I'm not the problem here. Why is there a problem to begin with? And why must you push all these things? And honestly, it causes even me, I don't trust a lot of neurotypicals. I'm nice to them. I've learned to mask and kind of hide and camouflage when dealing with them. But a lot of them I do not trust. And they don't even know it. They don't even realize that I'm like, no, I don't really trust you. I find a lot of what you say is bad.
Oh, man. It would be so bad if some of the guardians or the various neurotypical people in my field knew just how much I mock them the second the phone is hung up.
Talk about they wouldn't be trusting you either with that because they would feel very betrayed. But I think there's also the lack of accountability you encounter, and I include restitution and reparation. I don't know why I did, but I don't know how, and non-financially. I'm not looking at getting paid by neurotypicals, although I wouldn't be open to it. You want to throw money at me?
I would settle for a genuine apology for the people who made my life more difficult for no reason. I mean? I would take restitution in the form of, actually, let's have a do-over. Now that you're diagnosed, let's have a do-over of college for you. Without the financial responsibility of it. Since we dropped the ball on your education because we were treating you as a neurotypical and you didn't know why you were struggling.
No joke, you would, as someone who went back to college later, so much better because you have better grip on reality and the environment.
I believe it. And I don't know at this point that if I ever want to, it would disrupt my life too much at this point.
That's unfortunate.
But I loved learning before college. I did. I loved learning and it almost ruined it for me.
There is so much that you gain. Going back later, I'm like, why don't we have this as a thing? I understand there is a certain amount of capitalist things you must follow. But I'm like, going back later, there's things that I learned. There are programs and certain other things that I was able to take advantage of that I wouldn't be able to at the age of 19.
Yeah.
would just significantly.
I
just
don't know how
would
many
not
times
have.
I shut down because I felt like such a failure because I was
Yeah.
treated like such a failure,
So
and
many-
it just made me so sad and so
Yeah.
incapable. And you talk about restitution or reparation. That's what that would look like for me.
I honestly think that there needs to be a lot more focus on that of going back later, because it just, you're able to trust yourself more. Like right now, if you went back, you'd be able like, no, I can.
I'd be so much
I
more
can do
self-assured.
this.
I'd be able to go to a teacher and instead of going, I don't know why I didn't write that report. I'm so sorry. I'm so scared. I'm so upset. It would be, hey, I might need a little bit more time on that report. I was having a bit of a panic attack yesterday. I really did try.
Well, and
This is
also,
what's going on.
and also you could seek out opportunities to engage in things outside of the classroom that would still be at the college. Like I literally had things I worked on, literally got paid to work on various research projects that I don't think I would have been able to do when I was younger, just because I didn't understand and did not have the time management skills
Oh, yeah.
that I did now. Although I
Oh,
will
yeah. I've developed so many
yeah.
organizational skills that I didn't have as a teen. And no one was offering me support. And I was I got mocked for asking for help.
That's a fun one. That's always
So,
fun.
I learned to not ask for help. So there were opportunities where I probably could have got help if I asked.
Yeah.
But at that point, I was terrified.
Well, and also, I went back full time, and I did not do it alone. I mean, I
can't do it
singular.
alone.
No, yeah, I didn't do it singularly. I had a lot of other supports that I really deeply appreciate. Still to this day, I'm like, I didn't do it alone. If you're like, you did, I'm like, there was so much help I got, so much assistance I got that people aren't even aware of.
And that's okay.
But I was able to ask for it was the biggest
Yeah.
thing for me, is like I'm able to indicate and ask for it. And then I was able to confront teachers when I thought they were incorrect, or say, I don't want to do this specific assignment. Can I do this one instead, and offer up alternatives?
Or just ask,
So-
hey, I'm genuinely confused by this prompt or by
Yeah.
this assignment. It doesn't make sense to me. And trust that you're not going to get mocked, that they're going to take you at your word, that you are trying, you're not being difficult or asking for...
Yeah. Well, also when you're in the classroom and you're of a certain age, which they can kind of tell, like if they try to mock you or say something, you can push back. Like, no, this is actually what's going on. You have a lot more agency as an older adult, and that goes a long way.
Yeah. But going back
yeah.
to school right now, it would be financially... It's impossible.
Yeah.
As it currently stands. I can't
Right.
afford to leave my work to do that.
Oh, no, I'm not saying you should. I'm just
No,
saying
I
that
get
if you
you.
ever do
But restitution, that reparation, that's what that would look like for
a
me.
forgiveness of the debt you owe would be another part of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, for me, honestly, restitution reparation would be that the entire, and they're not going to like this, but a high majority of the board of directors and the C-suite and others on the Autism Speaks boards are to be autistic. They have like 2 people who are autistic in the entire leadership of the organization. And I say that qualifying because I'm sure it's like, no, there's other autistics in other chapters. I'm like, that doesn't count. It really doesn't count. But no, I that or dissolve the organization, because Autism Speaks didn't trust us. They didn't trust us to, live our lives. So I'm like, the only thing you can really do here is you need to make
here is that autism was the only thing not speaking.
right. Yeah, we weren't able to speak up for ourselves in this organization because they didn't permit that. And when we pushed back, they got very upset. So they really did. They got so much. But I think those are harder, and also you have a lot of autistics who will not want to engage with those organizations, even if it's like, hey, we're doing a majority here, because it's, well, you still have a lasting legacy. And what does it mean to join?
To admit when they are wrong, because they don't trust us to forgive them when they apologize.
I mean, that's a valid concern.
Right?
It is hard to forgive some of these organizations.
It is. But all I'm looking for a lot of the time is a genuine movement towards something better. A genuine attempt. That goes in all my areas of life. You know how chill I am. Like, you
Yeah.
like, slip on my pronouns. I can tell when you're doing it to be a jerk or when you're doing it just because habit and you make an attempt. Like, I can tell. You know? I feel like that goes for everything. A genuine attempt needs to be made. And it's like, trust us to be an adult about it.
Yeah, and I think the genuine part is hard. Because I have been...
Because we can't trust it.
Right, we can't trust it, but also, what's their genuine attempt? Is it just that you're on the board? And for example, like, I've served on a local autism organization, not Autism Speaks, never. Which, the irony of me saying that right there, but also, that would be like, I'm never going to be part of that. Another one, I was the only autistic on that board. There was someone else.
Did they listen to you?
I mean, sometimes... You had...
Did they listen to you when you weren't saying what they were already willing to do?
It was a mixed bag, because sometimes they really didn't literally understand it.
See, we don't trust you.
I think it was just they didn't get it. And it wasn't they said no. It was they took it for what they thought I was saying. And so that created a problem, because I'm like, no, I didn't say this. This is what I actually said. They did not... It was a disconnect of communication of the words. Like, they didn't process it. And there was a certain level of trust in other ways that I betrayed, for example. And this is an area where I did betray it at certain points. Now, it was justified, in my opinion, that, for example, Andrew Wakefield, the disgraced...
The vaccines... Bastard.
Yeah, the disgraced former doctor. He is no longer a doctor. He does not have his license. Therefore, he is not a doctor anymore.
Nope.
And I will say that very clearly, because if someone refers to him with that, or, well, he got his MD. Doesn't matter.
He broke the trust of his oath.
You can have your degree in criminal justice and become a cop, but if you are stripped of your badge, you're no longer a cop.
Nope. Just
period. So, his propaganda film... Vaxxed was being shown at a local independent movie theater. And I, with other autistics, got together and we were going to protest peacefully, quietly, with signs. We would engage people, but we would not be violent nor disruptive to a certain extent. Our presence there was already going to be disruptive. But we showed up. Also, we didn't think that he was going to show up. That was even funnier. Not only did he show up, but then he literally walked past us. So him and his little cadre recorded us, and we had somebody in our group record them, and it was a whole big thing. But word eventually got out because somebody else that was on the board I was a part of was attending this, which, not the best look for them. But then I get a call from our executive director who's just basically like, really? I'm like, I'm not going to be asking you for permission. I can beg you for forgiveness to a certain extent, but I'm not going to pass this through. Like, this is my own action. And yeah, I'm part of the board, but I'm doing this because this is too much. This is an area where I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to go. So I think their level of trust was that they trusted me to not do that to a certain extent. But they're like, well, you're also representative of the board. I'm like, I know, but I am also autistic and also part of this other organization. Mm-hmm. So I think that there was a certain level of trust they thought and just got betrayed a little bit.
Okay, but did they not also betray your trust by attending this?
Well, the executive director didn't. The other person on the board did. I don't know exactly who it was. The executive director did not go.
Well,
person.
But then the executive director, did he also scold the other person for going to this thing?
No idea.
Because if not, then that is also a betrayal of trust.
They probably did not.
Why are you in trouble and this other person isn't?
Because we were protesting. That's it.
Approval and disapproval are...
I mean, it's the protest.
If you only scold a disapproval and not approval, then you're making it clear whose side you're on.
Yeah, well, and this person was trying to ride the fence hard, and they also would say things to me when they got
but
very
writing the
upset.
fence only works if you're going to scold both.
Right. But I don't know if they did. I genuinely don't know, honestly.
I would be very surprised if they did.
Yeah.
That's a betrayal too.
I think that, well, there's also the fact that this person also told me about how much they, and it was when they were angry or upset, frustrated with me. They just, I wish my kids were, I wish my kids were more like you.
Ew.
Which I know what that's designed to. That's designed to basically state that I look at you as a success. You are autistic, but, or in spite of being autistic, you are achieving what I want for my kids to achieve.
It's also diminishing you.
Oh, very much so. It diminishes any struggles I have, which also that I don't share those. I'm like, why the hell would I tell you what my struggles are? Because you're automatically comparing me.
Well,
So
yeah,
you're
I
gonna
wouldn't trust him with that.
yeah, you're going to compare. Yeah, of course. You're going to compare my struggles to theirs and measure those, and like they're not the same. The struggles are not going to be exactly the same. We may utilize similar resources, but and I really hated it because it was also tokenizing. And tokenizing is making you the exception to the rule. So, yeah, no, it sucks. It sucks so much because I don't feel like I'm genuinely being trusted. I feel like I'm being viewed as the exception, as the token. And that all I'm good for them is I am the bar that they want all these therapies and social skills scripting and cures and fixes and treatments. They're aiming for me as the bar. And I didn't sign up to be the fucking bar. I didn't sign up to be the threshold. Because I still have struggle. Like some days, some weeks, some months, some years, I am on top of it. Other times, I don't feel like getting out of bed. I don't feel like I can get things done. I feel like I'm losing out on so much and I can't get things done. And even though I know it's okay, there is still that effort of, you feel like you can't, or that you feel like you're failing. Mm-hmm. With that, I think that there's also, with the fact that we are not able to really trust neurotypicals to a certain extent, and it sucks because then you don't know who you can and cannot trust. Is there any way to build that trust? I know we've circled around a little bit, but is there any way to build trust?
I don't know. I talked about this a bit earlier about like building trust, and I was talking about that on a neurodivergent to neurodivergent scale, right? And that's the thing, right? Like I'm a big believer in the idea that I can only control my own actions, right?
Sure.
And the sad counterpoint to that, right, is that, yeah, theoretically, we can build that trust, but y'all gotta put in the effort. It can't all be on me. Right?
That is true. Neurotypicals need to make some effort because for autistics, we lean and we are still reaching across the table in so many ways.
Right.
And it's not even recognized.
My unmasking, like I was talking about earlier, that is me putting trust into my community that they're gonna let me do that and not punish me for it.
Yeah.
Right? And there are neurotypicals that I deal with at work, that I deal with in my day-to-day life, who have earned that trust, by responding appropriately. And then there are neurotypicals who have lost that trust by not responding well to my unmasking, who I have to continue to mask around if I want to get around them, and I don't want to do that anymore. I'm done. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Because I don't trust I don't trust myself when I mask. I can't, when you pretend for so long, you get a little mixed up on how you really feel, how you really function, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I am just lazy. Maybe I am melodramatic. There are times when, I still to this day, if I'm sick, I don't trust that I know I'm sick. I need a fever or to throw up or, some proof before like, and I'm working on that, you know, it's a thing I'm working on, but I got called melodramatic so often, called faking it so often for, you know, things that in retrospect were probably like, okay, maybe I wasn't physically ill, but I was mentally struggling, or I was, you know, I had some other symptom going on and I wasn't well.
Yeah.
But like, I don't trust myself anymore, and part of unmasking is learning to trust myself again. So now, like, you have to put in the work. I'm unmasking, and that's showing a trust in you. What are you going to do with it? The ball's in your court.
Yeah. The efforts around inclusion and acceptance, because April's coming up, and and the thing is, I think we've stalled out a little bit, because it used to be autism awareness, which is still a common thing among people who are absolutely not knowledgeable or have any understanding of where we are as a community. But it shifted to acceptance, and it should be shifting to inclusion. It's like we're trying to move this forward.
All right,
but,
you know, we exist.
Yeah, awareness is tackled. We're done there.
You know we exist. That's covered. Cool. We're still kind of working on the acceptance. We'd like to move past that.
You should be accepting of us. That's not that difficult. It was a lower
That
bar.
wasn't a big ask.
No. You know, inclusion's a larger one, but you need to,
because it requires systemic change.
Yes.
Like so many things.
But there's little things that can be done, smaller things that can be done to be more inclusive, that are often, literally, the number of times that I will include my pronouns in a Zoom call or something.
Hell yeah.
It's still, and it's not exclusive to the autistic community, but it is something you should be doing. The fact that more people aren't doing it, I'm like, this is not a hard thing to do.
It's so little. It's such a little thing. And you know how much safer, as a non-binary person, how much safer I feel when I enter a Zoom call and there are pronouns everywhere? Like, I feel so much safer.
It just makes it also
Even if
easier.
It isn't going to be about gender. My gender is not going to come up at any point in the conversation. It's completely irrelevant to what's happening.
Yeah.
But it's not irrelevant because they've made that first step in building trust. I feel safer. I'm going to talk more in that meeting. Yeah. I'm going to feel more like I can say something and my opinions will be heard. And it doesn't matter that it's irrelevant to what's going on. You've made a step in building that trust, and that matters.
Yeah,
it's a great example.
I think, honestly, for the most part...
And, like, to be clear here, you're cis. Like, that's...
Yeah, I am cishet, white guy. It is definitely... Yeah, that's definitely who I am.
You are.
Don't get it wrong on that, but I am autistic, so I have that going for me at least.
Hey.
But I think also...
But that little...
Yeah.
That little thing...
Makes so much of a difference.
Helps you build trust, is an effort on your part that's building trust in the LGBTQ community that you are not part of.
Yeah.
So, as a result, and I can speak to this as your friend... You have a lot of queer friends who are comfortable being queer around you and not like hiding their queerness, not skirting around their queerness.
Right, and I make an effort to try to include that in them and their queerness into that, because it's like, this is part of who you are, trying to
And you have that trust. You have that trust, and I can speak to that as a queer friend of yours and viewing other queer friends of yours. And like... The trust is strong enough that, like, we've been able to call you out when you said something. It's like, you don't get to say that.
Right.
That's not cool.
It happens so rarely, I can't remember the last time it happened.
I can't either, but I know it's happened before, where, like, it's like, actually, stop that.
Right. And that's fine.
And you respond to that not with defensiveness, or if you do, like, your initial defensiveness, you get over it. You work on yourself, and you, like, come back. Okay, but why? Cool. We can have a discussion. We can educate. We can...
Or at least that's... Apologies, that was not the direction I was going into, but there it is, yeah. So, and lastly, before we wrap up here, because it's been nearly 2 hours, and...
Oh, is that why I'm so thirsty?
Yes. Neurotypicals are not really as common as we're led to believe, and this is something that I'm stating as not a question, but kind of a fact. Because the numbers, for example... And it's the left-handed graph that always is comes up.
Yeah.
Is we keep having the numbers go down, the ratio keeps getting smaller and smaller. Like it was 1 in 100, then 1 in 66, then 1 in like 44. I'm like, I think it's way more common than you are likely to believe. And it's because there is a level of, well, but I trust the medical establishment. I trust these organizations to not, be biased. Not lying, just be biased. And that, because the number itself, when I hear the number, I automatically I'm like, you're trying to say this should be eliminated.
Right.
Well, it's so much more common. We got to stop it from being so common. It's like, but it's not increasing, which this is the major discrepancy. And I will push back where I've questioned it before. And now I'm like, no. Our diagnosis tools are better. We literally had half of the genital population. I say that because people with vaginas. Yeah.
Sorry, that's just such a...
Half of the genital population.
I'm claiming it as a band name.
There you go.
The genital population.
Yeah, there you go. Some shoegazing. But the fact that half of the genital population was not diagnosed. How many women, and I'm speaking as cis het or otherwise, were not diagnosed?
It's fun to watch
from the 40s on. Oh no, it's definitely. I'm trying to be very clear here what I'm saying.
No,
which
I get you.
Yeah,
but like you're not wrong. Like this carries over. Like there's so many more queer people now. Yeah, we're marginally less likely to be murdered.
Yes, for being out.
Or it's more talked about. Like how many people would claim to be non-binary if they knew non-binary was a term, who would have never heard the term non-binary before.
Yeah.
Like, I've always been asexual. I didn't learn the term asexuality and what it meant until I was in my mid-20s, which is when I started identifying as asexual. Because I just didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah.
And, like, again, that comes down to trust, right? Like, how much am I going to trust the people around me if I'm open about who I am?
Exactly. And that's also when you have, and I'm just going to, like, even just cishet women that are going into a doctor's office and maybe pursuing a diagnosis since the 40s, that's still an uphill, it's been and is still an uphill battle. The number of women who are autistic who were told, well, you can't be autistic, you're a woman, is just, it's high. It's so common that if you are not paying attention to that, of course you're going to think the numbers are different. But it's like when you do, you're like, wait a minute, what's the percentage of just women classified by the census? Then you take that, like, okay, so if, let's say, I'm making these numbers up, so don't at me with whatever. Let's say 51%.
For demonstration purposes only.
Right, 51% of people in the United States are men, and 49 are women. Well, if 49% of the population is not viewed as autistic no matter what, they're just not diagnosed because, well, you can't be based upon stereotype and supposition, you have a 40% likelihood, like maximum, that the ratio of 1 to whatever is going to be impacted by that once you get rid of that stereotype, once you get rid of that bullshit.
And let's add on to that stigma, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many people don't go to mental health professionals at all? So let's say we pass that hurdle and our mental health professionals become miraculously capable of perfect diagnosis, right? Like, they never miss a beat.
Yeah.
They always diagnose correctly. Great. Cool. They've overcome their biases in this beautiful, perfect world.
Hooray.
There's still going to be a percentage of people who are like, well, I can't be different. Different is bad, and I'm fine.
I have a job, I have a house, I have a family.
I'm not going to seek diagnosis. Everyone gets very, very into one specific thing and learns everything about it and doesn't really like loud crowds and is uncomfortable with eye contact. That's just normal. You just have to deal with it. How many, show of hands, people whose hands I cannot see, how many autistics got a diagnosis and then immediately looked at their parents and went, ooh,
Yeah,
I have a secret and I'm not sure you're ready for it.
my father's diagnosis was terrible. It took me 3 times because the first 2 times, one was that my parents were the issue, not me. I was perfectly fine, which when you tell a 13-year-old that's just ego boosting.
That's normal. Everyone's like that. I'm like that. My dad's
Yeah,
like that. His dad was like that.
Yeah, your 13-year-old's going to be way more apt and your parents are just being hysterical. It's like, no, that's not the case. Second time, the psychologist literally told my father that I just needed boot camp because that worked for his child.
Jesus fucking
Which,
Christ.
as someone with a degree in psychology, that is absolutely not the case. That is it's worst practices. You don't do this. Well, it worked for my kid. That's great. It worked for your child. Also, it's boot camp. This is inherently, there are so many things to unpack there. I'm not going to. So in the third time, I received a really good diagnosis. It was, you're going to be able to grow up and do whatever you want. If you want to live on your own, if you want to get a job, if you want to start a family, there was like, you'll be able to do this. You will need supports to a certain extent, but you're going to be able to do it. And that was very, very different from other people's diagnosis. Different from my father's. My father went in at the age of, in his late 60s. And he went through all these tests, the battery of tests, the queries, the interviews, whatever. And finally, he's like, okay, well, am I diagnosed? And it was, well, we can give you a diagnosis, but what good is it going to do you? Verbatim. That's what they told him. And this is...
I'm sure that doesn't skew the statistics at all. How many people got told that one?
I mean, it opens up the door to something that we have not in the larger research community, in the larger disability advocacy community, which is not discussed, is that if a doctor deems that you don't need accommodations nor accessibility, do they give you the diagnosis? Because they view, large part, medical professionals view the diagnosis as merely a piece of paper that tangibly permits you to request accommodations and accessibility.
Mm-hmm. Or on the other end of the spectrum, right? In a genuinely being helpful and not dismissive side, my therapist offered to leave my diagnosis off my paperwork, to not give me an official diagnosis, because that could disqualify me from gender-affirming care in Missouri.
That is something I did not know.
That got overturned, but remember there was that brief period of time where they had passed like some bans for gender-affirming care for a bit?
Yeah.
One of the caveats was if you had a diagnosis of depression or autism, you could not receive gender-affirming care.
Who's not diagnosed with depression in this state?
Well, it's also like a two-sided coin because you require a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. And they tend to go hand in hand.
With depression, yeah.
Yeah. Like, you're gender dysphoric, but you're not sad about it. Like, okay. Like,
yeah, things are weird, but you know what? Everything's just fine.
But, like, first of all, infantilizing and dismissive, you're autistic, therefore you don't know your own person.
Right.
Right? But, like, it could have legitimately stopped me from receiving gender-affirming care, and my therapist made a note of that when I told her, and she was like, do you want me to leave it off? And that's actually good to know. I'm going to warn people in the future, like, that this is, if I give them a diagnosis, that is something that could be barred from them.
Yeah.
And that's a genuine consideration. And that was her being thoughtful. That was her dealing with me as a person and, like...
mitigating, not to make you feel better about it or being like, well, you don't need the label. It's, this may inhibit your future medical care.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
So there's another thing that can skew the percentages. So yeah, I'm with you. It's who knows what the actual percentage is, but guaranteed it's higher than we think it is.
I honestly, and I'm going to throw a number here and then look back on it 20 years from now, I think it's 1 in 12, which is a weird number to focus on. But I'm like, I think it's way lower in ratio than people are thinking, but it always gets highlighted as some sort of epidemic. I mean, it's not an epidemic. It's just people are not going to... They either don't disclose because, well, the doctor doesn't want to give you a label.
It's a minority, but it's a common variance. That's
Right.
what. That's the vibe I'm getting. That's
yeah,
the feel
it
I
is.
have. It's
But
a atypical standard, but it is a standard.
I mean, yeah, neurodivergent. I hate the term atypical so much, partly because
No,
of the
I
series,
was
yeah.
meaning that more in a statistics
Right.
sense.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, like it's not like I'm saying that it is not the vast majority or a majority even, but it is statistically significant portion of the population
Yeah.
to be considered to be a fairly normal variant. Oh my god, we're Pokemon shinies.
Probably. I mean, I've heard the
shiny variant.
I've heard the neuroatypical, which I'm like, why don't you just say neurodivergent? Just say neurodivergent. It flows easier. It just no. But I think that
Whatever word we use for it, whatever word, like yeah, absolutely, we need to be careful about our terminology. I
Right.
love precision of terminology, but words are flexible. People
Right.
are learning.
well,
The language changes.
I do identify as neurodivergent based upon various neurodivergences that I have, and also autistic.
I generally identify as either autistic or none of your damn business.
Well,
Depending on
you're
the
not going to tell
situation.
everybody wherever you go, and it's not really up to
I'm
them.
being an ass.
No, well, to a certain
You know what I'm
extent,
saying? It's,
you don't always need to tell people. It's like, no, you don't need to freaking
It comes
know.
up in conversation sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who is an advocate and activist, I will disclose, but it's kind of out there anyway. I'm like, if you don't know, then you clearly don't know much about me, and that's fine, whatever. But really, I think there is
Honestly,
a trust.
I disclose in the form of a joke 99% of the time. My autistic ass was having none of that. Like, that's the phrasing.
Gotcha. Yeah, it just slips it in there. They have to think about it. Yeah.
Wait,
But
were
I-
you being serious there? Yeah, I was being serious.
Yeah. But there is also, I think, the lack of trust with doctors not providing a diagnosis based upon the fact that they don't want to give you the label. Well, if you don't need it for these things, then why would we do that? It's like, because you need to do it for the numbers. Because we trust the numbers of the ratio. We trust the percentages that go through. And if you're not willing to do that, you are actively harming actual research. And
These are
and
the same
government
people who
benefits.
are then
Yeah.
going to be like, well, it's only this percentage of the population, so what's
Yeah.
it matter?
Or, well, there's only this many people we have to do, that therefore we can push for more of a cure or fixes or whatever. So, yeah, I have a problem trusting physicians. I really do. Now, the irony is, medical students I'm much more able to engage with because they're wanting to learn and they don't know, and they have not been...
They haven't reached that point of thinking they know everything.
Well, either that or, well, I went through medical school, we didn't cover this, so clearly it's not a big deal. And that's been a major problem. So many students don't get any education about disability in medicine at all. Like, literally, I served on a panel, and they're like, we haven't talked about this really at all. So the medical model is inherent, but it's not even talked about, and that creates a problem with care. So that lack of trust, like I can't trust the doctors. The doctors don't really trust in.
Ooh, there's
other
that
ways.
also double-edged sword with physicians. Like, there's a lot of physical things that go on that are comorbid frequently with
Yeah.
autism, right? Like, or with other various disabilities. I know we mostly are talking about autism, but like, you know, let's say Down syndrome or, you know, various other developmental intellectual disabilities. There's a lot of comorbid physical ailments. A common one that I see a lot is not quite being able to tell when you're overheating. Like, just not physically being able to tell when you're overheating.
Yeah.
That's important for a doctor to know. But it's related again to your intellectual disability, right? And if you disclose to a doctor that you have an intellectual or developmental disability, there's always the chance that they're not going to take anything you say seriously. So you're you're either not getting the physical help you need, or you're not getting the physical help you need. Like, it's in some other way. Like, your pain scale isn't going to make sense to your general autistic. Like, how many times have you looked at that stupid thing with all the smiley faces and go, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
No.
I guess by this chart I'm a 3?
Yeah.
When actually you're at like a 7, it's just that it's a terribly worded, stupid chart.
Yeah. I think that for building trust, neurotypicals need to do a lot more, but the problem is they're going up against a society that is not inherently establishing trust. And for autistics, especially autistic-centered organizations that are run by and for autistic individuals, we trust more. Like, I can be in a room of other autistics and I will trust that they are acting in good faith. They are acting in the best possible ways. They're not going to purposefully discriminate or stereotype against me. And so that trust is there, but it is not with neurotypicals. And I think to fix it is going to take so much, and it can't be a one-way street.
No, it really is going to have to come from outside the house. I don't know what.
No, you're right. Yeah. External to the autistic community.
Just being openly, proudly autistic and owning it and doing the things that I need to get through my day is me putting inherent and huge amounts of trust in my community. It's up to them whether or not they
build that trust.
Exactly. I am already, just by not being who I was 10 years ago, keeping my weirdness, quote unquote, under wraps and like breaking myself to make others more comfortable, and just being willing to like stay to somebody. Yeah, I'm autistic. This is what I need.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think honestly this has been a very good conversation. There's a lot
rambly.
I mean, trust is such a large, overwhelmingly broad topic.
Word.
But I feel literally as though this is something that it plays out in so many ways, and without that trust, I mean, the double empathy problem is literally a function of trust to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. And I feel like without that trust, we're not going to make a lot of headway, and we're going to encounter a lot more. We're still going to encounter the same problems and maybe a lot more in different ways in the future. So, but hopefully that can be mitigated in other ways, for what we do, and at least for as more people are diagnosed, hopefully this gets kind of encountered. But it was something I wanted to discuss. I'm like, is this something I just see? Am I, hanging up red yarn everywhere and looking at this, or am I actually
I've always wanted to do one of those murder boards. Completely,
Well, maybe you can do it as an art piece.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, it has been 2 hours. I am hungry.
I'm thirsty.
You're thirsty, and my pet here needs to go for a little excursion outside.
He needs to be told he's the goodest, bestest boy, and he's so cute, and he was such a good companion for this.
Yes. So with that, thank you all, whoever is listening, and not just us speaking to the void. I have been Leo Jones, and this has been Neurologic. There will be no future episodes, but there is potential for other things. This has been a great thing to do. It's been fun. It's been nice to have the ability to do it. And hopefully in the future, maybe in the next couple of years, I can put something together. We're looking at a different name. I'm looking at co-hosts. You're on the short list, Bree, by the way.
Hell yeah. Thanks for trusting me.
Absolutely. I do trust you. I trust you very heavily.
Thanks for having me on for this finale, I suppose.
Yeah.
The conclusion of Act 1. Look, I'm a theater nerd. I can't help it.
The final curtain is shutting down because I will also be closing the podcast, the service I use, because they apparently cannot save my credit card.
Did they lose your trust?
No, they just got really annoying. So, because they aren't overcharging me. It's just that they won't save it. So I'm like, your system is clearly broken.
Yeah, you can't trust them to be functional.
I mean, I can upload stuff to it that works. It is very, very
I like how
reliable.
You're defending them, and I'm just trying to make a joke.
I'm not defending them. I know it's a joke here, but it's like It's really just it's not even trust. It's the so your system is broken again, and you won't save by credit cards. So yeah, this is gonna be the last one, and then I'm gonna post all these on. I'm gonna post them all on YouTube because that's one of the most accessible places. Spotify would be a place, but I'm like, that's gonna be a pain, and YouTube is a lot easier to access, and you don't need an account. So
it's almost like you care about accessibility. I don't know why that would be.
Right? It's so weird. I do want people to be able to access it, and then I can point to it later. But with that being said, goodbye, farewell, and Auf Wiedersehen, and safe safe travels wherever you're going in your life. And, may all your dreams be wonderful.
Before Neurologic signs off permanently, I just wanted to say one final thing. Two final things, actually. First is that systems must fundamentally change, and unfortunately that's not going to happen soon or immediate. What we're not told as activists is that changing these systems is a day in, day out, grueling, 9-to-5, blue-collar lunch pail job. The disability rights movement is still challenging the cultural zeitgeist over 30 years after the passage of the ADA and the IDEA. And it doesn't feel like it sometimes, but on a long enough timeline, we win. Lastly, I want to leave you with this quote from Dr. Nick Walker. Stay focused. There are good reasons to be angry, but keep your anger focused and use it as a power source for constructive and effective action. Don't let it drive you to lash out over small things in ways that erode the social networks that we'll all be needing more than ever. Train to master your triggers so that you can differentiate between real threats and potential allies who are just annoyingly clueless on occasion. Don't let yourself or your friends get victimized, but don't be so certain you're always the oppressed party that you inadvertently become an oppressor in your community. Dare to burn bridges when it's the strategic thing to do, not out of rage. And remember to also sometimes dare to not burn bridges. Be a sword. Be a well-aimed arrow. Be a torch. But don't be a minefield. I have been Leo Jones, and this has been Neurologic. Neurologic is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. To view a copy of this license, visit creativecommons.org/by-nc-nd/4.0 or send the letter to Creative Commons, P.O. Box 1866, Mountain View, California 94042, USA. Neurologic uses the song Furious Freak, created by Kevin MacLeod, for its intro and outro music. Visit him at inconfitech.com. Furious Freak is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license, creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0. You can reach Leo Jones and Neurologic by email at neurologicpodcast@gmail.com.